Hey everyone, in this tutorial we're going to be going through how to download and set up VirtualBox. If you notice in a lot of my tutorials I'm actually using a VM. Some of them I use my native operating system, but a lot of times I'm working inside a VM. So I had someone ask me a question how to go ahead and download and get that set up. So if you just go to Google and type in download VirtualBox. VirtualBox is what I use, but there's also VMware. You can use that as well. I'm just more used to using VirtualBox, and it does everything I need it to do. But if you type in download VirtualBox, click the go to download button. This is the page it takes you to. I'm using Windows, so we want the Windows host. So this link right here, just go ahead and click it. It'll download it as soon as you click this link. I've already got it downloaded, so we'll go ahead and go to my desktop here. Double click the download. It should be called VirtualBox something.exe. Just go ahead and hit next on that. I don't want to start. You can leave all this default, but I just want to. I don't like shortcuts anywhere, so I usually disable all this stuff. I do want one on the. No, I'm gonna disable that too. And register. So the only one I'm leaving is register file associations, but you can just leave all those default if you want. And then hit yes on that and install. So pretty much next, install, yes. Hit yes on the little UAC prompt that comes up, and then it will start installing. So we can click finish here, and it should bring VirtualBox up, and it came up on my other window. So this is what it looks like when you first start it. So if you want to make a virtual machine, you can just hit new right here. Hit new, and then what do you want to name it? I'm going to make a Linux one just to test out. So I'm just going to, I have a Ubuntu installation ISO. So I'm just going to say UBU for Ubuntu, PER for personal, and then 01. So Ubuntu personal 01. And it's actually pretty cool depending on, it'll kind of see how you've named the machine and guess what type of OS you're installing on it. So I guess it saw UBU and thought it was Ubuntu, so it put Linux Ubuntu. But yeah, just pick the correct operating system right here and give it a name. Hit next. Oh, and it's probably because I've had this installed before. Hold on one second. You won't, if this is your first time installing it, you won't get this message. But let me go here real quick and clear this out. Users. As a VirtualBox, yeah. Let me delete that. It's because I had already installed a virtual machine with that name before in the past, so it was saying it couldn't create it. You won't get that message though. So then you just hit next. Then it's how much of your computer's RAM do you want to give this machine? I have 16 gigs of RAM, so I'm going to give it 4. It really completely depends on what you're going to be doing with this machine, but I'm just going to give it 4. And there's different types of hard drives you can give a virtual machine. I'm just going to leave it at the default, create a virtual hard disk, and I'm going to make it a VirtualBox disk image. Now you can do dynamically allocated, which what that does is you don't give it a fixed size. As the virtual machine, you create more files or install more things on it, it'll dynamically expand the hard drive capacity of it, but it also makes it slower. So I just usually give it a fixed size, and I'll just make it like 50 gigs. Again, this entirely depends on what you're going to be putting on this thing, but this is just to test. I actually don't even need to make it 50, but I have like 6 terabytes in this machine, or 4 terabytes, whatever. So 50 is not that much. So we'll give it 50 gigs. And this part usually takes like a minute to create the hard drive file. So I'll let this run. I'll see you guys once this is finished. Okay, so it looks like it just finished making my virtual hard drive, which is a file. If you actually go to your C drive, users, your username, and then VirtualBox, it'll make a folder here that contains all the files needed for your virtual machine. The .vdi file is the hard drive file it makes. So this is kind of like, it represents what your physical hard drive would be in a real computer, but it's just a file on this computer. So before we boot it up, it doesn't have Linux installed on it yet. This is just kind of, think of this as like this little icon right here is just a blank hard drive. We haven't put anything on it. But before I boot it up, let's go ahead and highlight it and click settings, because there's some setup I want to do before we load the virtual computer up. The first thing I want to do is go to system and go to processor. I'm going to give it 2 cores. My CPU has 12, so this is how many cores of your CPU do you want to tell this virtual machine to use. You don't want to give it too many, because then it'll take cores away from your actual native operating system. So 2's fine for this. We don't need to enable anything else on here. For display, just go ahead and max this out. It really depends on what kind of graphics card you have, but most people nowadays have cards with plenty of VRAM on it. So just go ahead and put this at 128. For monitor count, it depends on how many monitors you want to use. I'm just going to use 1. All this other stuff for right now, I'm going to make videos on how to go into like networking and set up stuff in here, and USB, because it's kind of tricky how to get USB devices to work in this, but I'll make a video on that later. Everything else you can kind of leave default and hit OK. So now what we want to do is go ahead and start the machine. So just highlight it, click Start. And again, this is like us booting up a computer with a blank hard drive. So it's going to load a window up, and it says, hey, you need to supply like a operating system image. So just click the folder here. It's going to bring this menu up. We want to click Add. And I have an Ubuntu. Actually, I have a newer one. That's 18.0. I have 20 right here. So I've downloaded Ubuntu 20, version 20. If you don't know how to get that, you can just type in download Ubuntu, and I'm sure the top link at the top is Ubuntu's official website. You can also install Windows if you want to install Windows. So we'll click this. It adds it right there. Go ahead and click Choose, or I think you can double click it. Yeah, just double click it. Click Start. And this is the same as if I were to put an Ubuntu installation disk into a computer and have it boot from the CD drive. This is what would show up on the screen. So again, this isn't really a tutorial on how to get Linux set up, but honestly, Linux is pretty straightforward on getting installed, especially Ubuntu. But we'll just go through all this. It's going to ask us a bunch of questions that we're pretty much just going to hit next and make a username and password, all the standard stuff. But we're not done yet. As soon as it installs this operating system, you're going to notice some stuff that's kind of weird. That you're going to want to know how to fix, and I'll show you how to fix that as soon as we get the operating system installed. So for Ubuntu, we're going to install. So click Install right there. This is what type of keyboard you have. I'm just hit it default English. So I'm going to, on this screen, you can leave everything default, but I want to check this install third-party software for graphics and Wi-Fi hardware, just in case there's anything that it might, if I don't check this, there might be something later that I run into an issue with where I need to go download something to get it to work properly. So I'll just check it and hit continue. Just leave this blank, hit erase, or leave it default, hit erase disk and install Ubuntu. It's not going to erase your actual hard drive, it's just the hard drive file that VirtualBox made. And hit continue on this message. And this is your time zone, so that's fine. Hit continue on that. And this is where we can make all of our username and password stuff. So UBUPER01 is what I'll name it. Put your name there, pick username and password. And we'll just set it to log in automatically. And from this point forward, it's probably just going to start the installation. So I'll see you guys once the installation's finished. Okay, so it looks like Linux is done installing. So it'll ask you to restart. So you can just hit restart now. and just press enter on that. And it should restart. I mean, this part might take a minute. And typically what I've noticed, this first boot up kind of right here takes longer than when you initially load it up afterwards, just because there's probably some setup it's doing in the background. I'm going to skip all this. This is like the initial Linux startup stuff. We're just going to skip all this and done. All right, so Linux is installed, but the first thing you're going to want to do, first off, you're going to notice the screen is really small, and if you go to display settings, under resolution, you can do, well, first of all, these resolutions don't really match the supported resolutions on my monitor, and if you click any of them, it just doesn't really fill the screen. Like it doesn't know the proper resolutions that my monitor supports. So you can't really get it to look correctly. So I'm going to revert these settings. In order to fix that, you need to, and a bunch of other stuff, you'll be working in this and you'll start realizing certain things are kind of sluggish, or they're just kind of jank feeling. The reason that is, we're going to remind me later on that, you need to install this thing called VirtualBox Guest Editions, and what that is, it's a bunch of programs that get installed onto the virtual machine, the guest operating system, which is this, that tell it how to work more optimized as a virtual machine. Because if you don't install these, you'll notice a lot of weird things. Like the resolution's the first thing you're going to notice. It's like, why are my resolutions all they're not correct, and I can't get it to go full screen. So once you're in the OS, if you go to the top here, go to devices, and there'll be a check or a box right here that says insert guest edition CD image. Just click that, and that's like us entering a CD into the Linux CD drive, and it's going to say, do you want to run that CD that was just put in? So click run, and it's the same in Windows, only it's going to have the Windows prompt that says, do you want to run this CD? Let's enter our password. It's going to go ahead and start installing everything from the guest edition CD. And if this takes a minute, I'll just fast forward. I don't remember it taking too long, but oh, we actually need to restart the machine. So let's go ahead and power off. Well, actually just powered off, restart. Okay, guys, so there's actually an issue I was running into that I've never had before. I don't know why this is occurring now, but for some reason when I try and run the guest editions, so if I run that auto run on the CD, I keep getting this error message right here. Normally this has worked for me every time. It pretty much says this system is currently not set up to build kernel modules. And it kind of gives me some instructions here, but I just Googled that error message and found someone that said you can just install them through Ubuntu's package system, and it works. So let's do sudo apt install VirtualBox guest utils, dash utils, VirtualBox guest. All right, let's try this and see if this works. I don't know if they may have, because I just downloaded this newest version of Ubuntu. Maybe there's something that's like not compatible with the built-in VirtualBox Guest Edition CD. I'm not sure, but I found someone online that had the same issue, and they ran this, and it seems to have fixed the issue. So let's see if this works. Again, I don't think you're going to have an issue at all on Windows. I've done this like a million times on Windows, and it just kind of works. You run the Windows installer from the CD, and it fixes everything. You have full screen. It supports all your monitors' resolutions. The graphics are smooth. I might do a video on doing it on Windows as well. I don't know, but all right. So it looks like we have it installed successfully. We may need to reboot. So let's restart it and see what happens. I don't think we need to actually run. I think that installed the VirtualBox guest editions itself. It just downloaded them off of Ubuntu's software repository. So I don't think we also have to install the one that came with VirtualBox from up here. So, but we'll find out. One thing to note, the login screen, the first time you boot it up won't be full screen because you have to actually log in order for it to access those VirtualBox install files for it to know to work out the resolution. So the login screen is typically always like this little box right here. Okay, so yeah, it just booted up, and if you notice, the screen fills our window here, so it looks like that worked. Yeah, so just try that. If the VirtualBox, I've never had that happen before. It's weird. The built-in guest edition CD did not work with this version of Linux for whatever reason. I don't know why, but like I said, I just downloaded. This is the newest version of Ubuntu, so maybe there's just some compatibility issue, and you have to download the VirtualBox guest editions through Ubuntu's repository. Again, if you're using Windows, you probably won't have that issue at all. You just install it and it works. But let's say, we still have the window border up here. If you want to get rid of that, if you hold down the right control key, which is known as your host key, you can access a bunch of shortcuts. But one of them is F for full screen. So right control on F, and it will actually full screen it. And it'll look like this is kind of how I usually work right here. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, I'll probably do some more tutorials on VirtualBox, like how to mess with the networking portion of it, where you can put like a web app on a server and then have your router to where you can access like a web server like outside your own private network at home. But yeah, I'll see you guys in the next tutorial.